Hello and welcome back to Jack's Corner. I'm Tarzan Banana, and with me as always is our founder Jack Figgle. How you doing, Jack?
Good, Tarzan. Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
We're still in the Paschal season, second week after Easter. And so that's our greeting in the Eastern Church. Christ is risen. In Slavonic, Christos Voskres. In Greek, Christos Anesti.
Correct.
So I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. Been a beautiful Pascha season for me. Sorry if my voice is a little bit raspy. I went up to see my family for the weekend, and yesterday was a 5-hour drive of singing early 2000s music to keep my wife awake. But besides that, all is well.
Good, good.
Yes. So what do you have for us today?
So today I have sort of a summary, if you will, of a trip that I made in 2008. So now going back 16 years or so. And it was a multi-purpose trip. So we're going to split it up into two podcast sessions. I'm going to talk about the first half today, which was going to Uzhhorod and Transcarpathia for Pascha, and then going to see Patriarch Bartholomew for a one-on-one private audience. And then the second half will surprise everyone next week and let you in on the secret as to what that was, the second half of this trip. So today we're going to talk about the first half.
All right.
So in 2008, at the end of the year, we were planning a second pilgrimage of Light of the East, and so I wanted to schedule the detailed plans with His All Holiness in Istanbul, Constantinople, and so he agreed to meet with me one-on-one in the spring of that year, which was around Pascha in April, so that we could, talk about the schedule and work out the details for our trip and visit later in the year with the group. But since it was Pascha time and I had never been to our motherland, namely Transcarpathia or Zarkarpathia, as they say in the local language, which is the far southwest corner of Ukraine, up against the Slovak and Hungarian borders. There is the mother church of Diocese of Mukachevo, with the cathedral in the city of Uzhhorod or Uzhhorod, depending on your pronunciation. And I decided, since I'd never been there, it would really be interesting to be there for Pascha and see the celebrations there. And so I made arrangements with the rector of the seminary, Father Taras Lovska, to go and visit, have a guest room at the seminary, and participate for 4 or 5 days, the full liturgical life of Holy Week and Pascha with the seminarians, which meant we had 3 and 4 prayer services. All we did really was go to the chapel and pray, and go to the refectory and eat, and go to our rooms and sleep.
Yeah.
Wasn't a whole lot of time for anything else.
Yes, I don't know much about the type of prayers that are done at an Eastern seminary, but it's always fun, at least for me, when I go visit my friends who are in the Latin Rite seminary, and I get to do their whole prayer day. I imagine it's likely similar, but different books used.
Yep, that's right. It's the Byzantine Daily Office, which Eastern Christian Publications is published in various forms. But Holy Week is even a more elaborate time period, and there's a whole big book of just Holy Week services, and none of them, sort of in general, are less than 2 hours each, 2 hours long. So there's anywhere from 3 to 4 per day. So it's quite elaborate, but it's very fulfilling and very prayerful, and especially being with 100 seminarians singing their hearts out, having 100-voice male choir singing all this stuff in Church Slavonic, which was sort of the church language I grew up with as a boy with my grandfathers that would take me to church. And I think I've probably mentioned this before. When I was a boy, we had an English liturgy in the morning at 8:30, and the Church Slavonic High Mass that was called at 10:30, when they did all the prayers and they used incense. The 8:30 Low Mass was only certain prayers, to keep it short, and no incense. So it was the High Mass, the 10:30 was really the one to go to. And that's where all the old people went. So my grandfathers would take me, because I was an altar server and would serve every 8 weeks. We had so many servers. And so on the weeks that I served and went to the English one, I would have him take me for the Church Slavonic one as well, just so I could sit all the singing. So that's what I grew up with. And so I was very comfortable. It's like a lot of Roman Rite Catholics that like to go listen to a Latin Mass today. If they grew up with it, that's what they think is, real spiritual prayer.
Yeah.
So I scheduled to be in Uzhhorod and stay at our seminary. It was relatively recently built, so it was kind of stark. It did not have a whole lot of icons. The altar was just an open area with icons on stands. They did not have an iconostas yet. So, and because there was no carpeting and it was all made out of marble and hard walls, there was an awful lot of echo.
Oh my, yeah. We went to a church went to an Eastern church for the Nativity, and there was no carpeting, very, very echoey, plus all the children running around. My wife had to step out for a minute because it was overwhelming.
Yeah, and I also took my video cameras, because by then I was sort of have studio will travel, and I set them up, and so I now have a package of Paschal pilgrimage, Holy Week at the monastery of Blessed Theodore Romja in Uzhhorod, and so I have all of those services on video, and of course they're the audio is discernible, but it's not like choir level, and it's not studio level. It's it's the real deal. It's what it was like, and it's got lots of echo. So it was really very, very lovely. I remember the night of Pascha, or the night before Pascha, really, when we have resurrection matins and the Divine Liturgy under certain schedules. Schedule in America has changed a bit since of all the security issues with late night things. And now, of course, things have changed from the pandemic. But back in my old day, and still in Europe, in Transcarpathia, the resurrection matins is done at midnight, followed by a divine liturgy, followed by blessing of baskets.
Mm-hmm.
And so that goes till like 2 or 3 in the morning. And since you've already been to divine liturgy, you don't have to go to church in the morning. You go for Sunday afternoon vespers of Pascha, which is, unique in and of itself. So we were there late at night, and I had never seen it before. And so I was in the church, in the chapel, taking care of my video recordings and singing along with the seminarians. And we went all through matins and then through the liturgy. And then it came time for blessing of baskets. And so I wanted to go outside and follow the priest who was doing the blessings. We stepped out the front door of the chapel, and I could not believe my eyes. the three sidewalks that led from the chapel to the main seminary building and around it that were 100 yards long were lined on both sides with double sets of baskets of food with candles in them.
Mm.
There must have been over 1,000 people there with their Easter baskets to get blessed. And to this day, that's a big, huge tradition in that part of the world in general of having Easter baskets out on the street, on the sidewalk, covering every square inch that you can find, because there's not room in the church for everybody who gets Easter food blessed. And I had never seen one quite this elaborate. We had some elaborate ones at my parish in Virginia, but this was just incredible. And it took, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes for the priest just to walk up and down the lines. And over there, because there's so many, and there's so many people outside waiting to get blessed because they can't fit into the chapel, they've been listening to all the prayers through loudspeakers and microphones. That's another tradition over there, is a lot of people come to church and have to stand outside to listen to what's going on. But they use a big, long, foot-long blessing, hand blessing that's made out of horsehair. So it's a big 1.5 inches thick, big, long thing, and they have a bucket of water that a server carries, and the priest dips it in the bucket of water, and he goes swish, swish over his head, and the water goes 20 feet in both directions, and the whole horsehair like dumps, a whole pint of water on people just in one swish. And he does this repeatedly as he walks. He doesn't sit and bless each basket and little sort of dabble, 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 dabble. It's whoosh, whoosh, dip, whoosh, whoosh, dip. It's just incredible to watch. And that's what people go for. And of course, they cheer and they clap. And then there's, the server who comes by behind with the basket for people to offer a donation for getting the blessing.
Hopefully all the food doesn't get soggy.
You're right. No. Well, I think they over there they uncovered. Here we put plastic over it, and at least until the time, and we don't have quite that much water. But it goes in such a large area that even so much water, it just gets dispersed in a big, huge arc over the people. So, and it was edifying to see last Monday that the BBC put out on their website pictures of Pascha in Uzhhorod, showing Bishop Neil doing exactly that with baskets on both sides and him going swish, swish in photographs, because it was the first time in history, and this is what the BBC was focusing on and reported correctly, the first time in history that church of Mukachevo held Pascha on the Gregorian calendar.
Mm.
And so it was a kind of a big deal. And because I've been working on a common date for Easter issues for the last couple of years, it was particularly of interest to me because the Ukrainian churches, both Catholics and Orthodox, and the whole government have switched to the Gregorian calendar for all the fixed feasts to separate themselves from the Moscow Patriarchate and Russia, who follow the Julian calendar for Christmas and all those dates. But in Orthodoxy, they've maintained sort of a mixed calendar where they do that for the fixed dates, but they keep Julian calendar for Pascha so that all the Orthodox churches around the world celebrate together, except not all of them do. The Church of Finland adopted 100 years ago the Gregorian calendar. And there's one or two other small Orthodox churches that use the Gregorian calendar for Easter as well as fixed feasts. So now most of Orthodoxy in Ukraine, all of Orthodoxy in Ukraine, and of course the Greeks have been doing this for years. They follow the new calendar, the Gregorian calendar for Christmas, but the old calendar or Julian calendar for Pascha. But Transcarpathy even went one step further to have Pascha on the Gregorian dates with their Slovak and Hungarian counterparts in the Greek Catholic Church. And my own speculation might be that Bishop Neal and the folks in Transcarpathia did that to separate themselves from the Church of Ukraine in Kiev, to show that they are different and separate as a Ruthenian church. But that's just my speculation. Anyway, it was edifying that the BBC picked up on it, and they actually showed it in 3 pictures very, very well. They had one picture of Bishop Neal with the horsehair. They had one picture of the cathedral up on top of the hill, all in lights, with all the baskets lining the street getting up to the hill. And then a third picture showing 4 or 5 children sampling food out of one of the baskets. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful to see in general, but especially to see that the BBC picked up on it. So it got pretty widespread. So back to our story. So I spent the week of Pascha and up through Bright Monday, because on Bright Monday we have a special service where we proclaim 4 gospels from the 4 corners of the church, and there's a procession that goes with it. So I stayed there through then, and then I flew from, I drove across the border from Uzsarad down to Budapest in Hungary to then get a flight to Istanbul. And I had scheduled a private one-on-one meeting with Patriarch Bartholomew. So this was in April of 2008 to plan our visit with the group in October of that year. So I had been there, as I've been reporting several times, with various archbishops and others. And this time it was first time I was there by myself. But I knew kind of how things worked. And so I waited in the English language office for my appointed time. And the patriarch was pretty much on schedule. And so I went up in my cassock and had my notes. I had a book for him. I forget which one it was at that time to give him. And we talked a little bit about the dialogue in general and where things stood, recovering after the problems of the year 2000 and the Emmitsburg failure meeting, and that things were coming back. I think 2007 or 8 was when the Ravenna Agreed Statement was published, and so the dialogue was looking pretty good at that time. And it was a very, very friendly conversation. It actually, turned out to be some 40 minutes that I had with him one-on-one, and no translators. He spoke perfectly good English. No one else there to take notes. I had no one else with me. It was just him and I for 40 minutes. It was really, really special time.
So this is the only record of that event?
I think I have a picture of me presenting the book to him or something. But yeah, this is.
I meant like verbal record. Like you have pictures, you have documentation. It happened, but like there's no record. Like Jack said, Patriarch said.
No, there's no transcript. And in fact, there may not be too many pictures because it was just he and I in the room. So in 2008, 16 years ago, there were no cell phones to make selfies.
No.
They weren't invented yet.
But
I do distinctly remember one aspect of that meeting that really has stuck with me. And that was when I brought up the subject of coming to visit with a group later in the year in October. He pulled out of his own cassock pocket his private diary and schedule and said to me, "When do you want me to speak to your group?" I didn't even have to ask. He just volunteered.
He's like, "I'm going to talk to them. What time?"
Yep. And when do you want me? And it wasn't like, I had to ask him, well, when are you available or anything? He was asking me when I wanted him on our agenda. I thought it was absolutely incredible that he was asking me for a date and a time. And when I gave it to him, he immediately wrote it down in his diary himself. And it was, like, I've arrived. It was very, very special that someone at his level would ask me for, when do you want me there?
Yeah, when that happens, you've made it. When the patriarch, the ecumenical patriarch says when, asking when, and gives you the power for that answer, you've made it.
And then it got even better in that the English language office deacon told me after I came back and told him what transpired to make sure he knew about it and everything else. He said, almost all of the groups that come from Greece and all over the world to see him come to the Fanar for an audience. Yours is one of the few, if I don't know, maybe even only group where he goes to your hotel to greet you, because that was the plan. He was going to come to our opening session at our hotel to welcome us to Istanbul.
Yeah, you just have the in. You are the in crowd is the answer to why.
Not only did he ask me for a date and time, but he wanted to know what hotel and where he was going to come to greet us and welcome us. And so it was extremely, that was super, super special. In the end, it was for naught, because later that summer in 2008, there was a coup attempted against Erdogan, the president of Turkey. And in the fall, Erdogan closed down the country for 90 days, and the State Department put Turkey on the do not visit list. And so I had to write him a letter in September that year apologizing that we had to cancel our visit. And so in the end, even though we had this arranged and everything, because it was just too dangerous for us to travel there, and I'm sure he got lots of other cancellations like that as well. There was nothing any of us could do about it. And he certainly understood, there was no negative reaction or anything. His staff simply said, oh yeah, other groups are canceling too. And so we're not surprised. So the next time you want to come, just let us know and we'll certainly arrange it again. And I've been back half a dozen times since, on other occasions with groups and so forth. So,
but you ever get the hotel visit? Did you ever get that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. Yep. We did. Yeah, that was a private one-on-one that I'll remember forever, and it was very special. And then, like I said, it turned out to not come to fruition, but just the one-on-one visit accomplished an awful lot. And not that I had to, but it certainly in my mind solidified the warm friendship and respect, if you will, that he had for me and that I, of course, have for him. And so when I write him, as I did just last year, and ask for an audience for a group on a particular date and time, I had an answer within 2 days in the affirmative for the date and time that I wanted to come. So it's like anytime I want to go there, he's got open arms and very welcoming. So it's really great. I'm going to be very, very sad when he's reached the end of his life and there'll be a new patriarch. But it has been almost a lifelong experience, because I first met him in '96, which is now going back almost 30 years.
So what I'm hearing is I really quick have to get like $6,000 together so that I can be part of this group that meets him next. That's what I'm hearing. Got it.
Next. Well, and I've got to get my health squared away and get rid of my back problems so that I can walk and lead the group next year. But yeah, next July. And For everybody that's listening, save the date if you haven't heard it before. July 14 to 26, I believe. It's a Monday through a Saturday. We're planning for the anniversary of Nicaea a trip to Rome and to Turkey, including a private audience with Patriarch Bartholomew, a visit to Nicaea, where the first ecumenical council was held. And the Nicene Creed, the first half was written and agreed to, and the common date for Easter was first agreed to at that first ecumenical council. And then we're also going to do like a couple of day bus trips to visit the 7 churches of Revelation, all in Western Turkey, including Ephesus, which is the most well preserved of all of those cities. So it's going to be quite a trip, and yeah, so it's going to be July of 2025. And it's too early for us to get firm pricing, but it's probably going to be somewhere around $6,000 with airfare, 2 meals a day, rooms every night, and all local transportation and touring. So it's going to be an all-in package. And our limit's going to be 40 people to fit on a bus. So we'll be announcing more information later this summer as I get more details. We're working with Viking Travel again as last year because they did such a great job. They have a special office in Chicago, and they focus only on arranging custom faith-based tours like this. So it's part of the same company that does the riverboat cruises and has big ocean-going Viking cruises, but this is the travel office that handles nothing but religious-oriented custom designed trips. And I've already had 2 Zoom calls with the Viking people in Chicago and their local representative in Eastern Europe that'll handle the Turkey and Rome specifics. So we've already had that conversation with a rough agenda and itinerary that we're going to work from. So it's going to be an exciting trip. It's going to be a little arduous with a lot of flights because we want to go both to Istanbul and Rome in the same trip. And Turkish Air is the cheapest airline by far. So to get the best price we can, we're probably going to be flying Turkish Air to all the cities, to both places. So, which means from Rome, we're going to have to come back by way of Istanbul. But this time, we're going to put a day or two in Istanbul on our return from Rome so that we're not traveling for 14 hours in one day, as we did 2 trips ago. That was too arduous. That was too much. So, yep, save up your kopecks, Tarzan. We're gonna have a really, really good trip next July.
Okay. Well, is that the end? Does that conclude all you want to tell?
Yep, that's it for this session. We will leave a little teaser with our listeners that the next session you can tune in, and we will be telling the rest of the story of that trip in 2008.
All right. Well then, thank you for telling us this tale, and thank you all for coming to this episode of Jack's Corner. New episodes are always on Monday, and so we look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Goodbye and God bless. All right.